That's been corroborated by modeling by the University of Texas. That reduction in infection rate has averted the kind of tragedies we've seen in other parts of the world and other parts of the United States. Now that we have gotten to a 90% reduction in infection rate, I know that we can't stay home forever. We do need to find ways to adapt to COVID-19 and begin commerce in a mindful and measured way. And there is no better partner to help us figure that out than commerce itself. So we've asked the Chamber of Commerce to be the host of a very big tent conversation about how we adapt our commerce to COVID-19. We don't yet have a sufficient testing capacity. We haven't yet topped out on the increase in cases locally. So we remain in a period of suspended animation until we see a stabilization in the increase in cases and our hospitalization rate starts to come down. The thing we must avoid is overwhelming our hospital capacity. That's when tragedy and unnecessary loss of life begins to spike in ways that our community simply can't abide. So we need partnership with our business community to find ways that we can adapt that will be safe for our residents, that will keep our infection rate low and manageable within our hospital capacity. And we also recognize that this has to be a group effort. This has to be a hands-on, all hands on deck, whereby we help each other keep that infection rate low. A top-down regulatory regime is not possible in this circumstance. We are reliant on property taxes and now that are capped and a diminishing sales tax because of our reduced commerce. So we will be relying on every Travis County resident to help us help each other. And so this is in the spirit of partnership. We're going to get through this by adapting to COVID-19 until we have sufficient test capacity and we have effective treatment and we have a vaccine. We don't yet have those three things. So adaptation is our way forward.
Judge, thank you. You know, I've talked to mayors across the state, and I really do think that our city and I enjoy a closer alignment with our county than just about anybody has across the state. So thank you for that. Thanks to Laura Huffman and to the Chamber. I'm not sure that Laura was anticipating to be drafted by the judge and me on her very first day of the job, but I really appreciate her answering that call and the Chamber helping us to organize this task force. And I want to thank all the volunteers who agreed to serve on the task force. You know, I want to state right up front a concern I have with the task force and with this conversation, because I don't want people to hear this conversation is taking place and get confused about the threat of this virus being over, or believing that somehow we've mastered the virus at this point, or that it can't spread like wildfire, killing thousands of people in our city, because all of those things are as true today as they were the first week in March, when we first really started discussing this in earnest. We're going to be dealing with this virus for an extended period of time. Hasn't gone away, it's as infectious as ever. But we also recognize that we have to move forward. So on the one end of the spectrum, you know, we socially separate, physically separate, and we do as much social distancing as we can. That will limit the spread of the virus. We've seen that, and we've seen that it works. It is really the best way to avoid infections and death and to protect against the surge. But we also recognize that because of the impact on social needs and commerce and economic and well-being, we know this is not something we can sustain over an indefinitely long period of time. At the other end of the spectrum, we don't control physical interactions. We lift that. In that instance, the virus spreads rapidly. We would face a surge peak quickly. And with that, we would lose thousands of people in our community. So this is also not a viable option. We have to find that place that protects the public health and safety, and still at the same time allows us to adapt and move forward. So what we need, as the judge mentioned, was a much higher level of testing so that we know where the virus is and we can find it if there's an infection that happens. We have to have better capacity to trace so that when we find an infection, we can isolate it and control it. We have to know and how we're going to cocoon those that are most susceptible in our community. With all those things said, then we have to move forward on how we mitigate and control the risks that are associated with adapting our lives and our city to living with this virus. We have to know how and when we've gone too far so that we can pull back well before a surge happens. We need our business community to understand the science and the data and the advice of the doctors. And then we need their help. We need their help in helping to identify how it is that we can adapt and move life forward and do it in a way that preserves the public safety. I appreciate Laura convening this group. I really look forward to the advice. I recognize that on Monday, the governor is going to issue orders. And obviously that becomes a large part of our reality. And we have to figure out then how we best do whatever is ordered in our city. So, Judge and Laura, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Judge and Mayor. And good morning, everyone. No, this was not the call that I expected on my first day of work. The good news is I actually completed my new employee paperwork yesterday. So here's, I think what I want to say. One is we're really honored, Mayor and Judge, that you reached out and asked us to lead this charge. And I accept that challenge and the concerns that both of you have raised about the perception or the reality of moving too fast or too slow. I think that the charge that you have given to this task force is to hold two things at once. The first is to honor public health and community health. And I think that that is something that has become very personal for all of us, right? We've all been in our homes for quite some time now, figuring out how to live and work and educate from our living rooms. And so I don't think that that priority will be lost on anybody that's participating in the task force. And how can we thoughtfully and safely reopen the regional economy? So, you know, I think you can count on us as a task force to hold those two things as mutual and interlinked priorities. I'm really pleased that this task force represents a wide range of interests in the community. We've got everybody from some of our local iconic businesses like Kirby Lane and P. Terry's to our large employers like Dell and Samsung. We've got our sister chambers, both within Austin and within the region. The outreach that I've received so far is that, one, everyone is grateful that you have created a way to get that robust regional feedback. And so I think I can safely say on behalf of the entire task force, thank you. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to weigh in. Thanks for giving us the challenge to hold as mutual priorities public health and reopening the economy. We're going to kick off tomorrow with a Zoom meeting. So it'll be the Brady Bunch on steroids as a meeting. And what I would want to say is you can count on us to give you some extraordinarily thoughtful recommendations that scan all types of business interests and human interests in the community. Thanks.
Wonderful. With that, we'll go ahead and open it to questions. As a reminder, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I know some of you, I'm looking at KXAN, Business Journal, statesmen emailed questions. If you can add those to the Q&A tool, that'll be very helpful. So our first question is from Christian Flores with CBS Austin. Is there a number of illnesses and deaths where you would scale back once beginning the phased-in opening?
Kristen, we have been working hand in glove with the University of Texas, doing modeling since the end of, actually since the beginning of March. So we have a pretty good idea, possibly a better idea than most other areas of the country, what our hospitalization rate is. We have an excellent collaboration with our 3 hospital groups, as well as Central Health in the Austin-Travis County Public Health apparatus. So we have a pretty good idea of what our infection rate is, extrapolating from our hospitalization rate. What we know from their analysis is that we have reduced our infection rate by about 90%, and that has kept us within our current hospital capacity. If we were to fall to something less than 80% reduction in our infection rate, we would begin to overwhelm our hospital capacity, and you would start to see the kind of chaos we've seen in other countries and other parts of the country. Other parts of the United States. So we believe that the threshold where we can absorb our infection rate is 80% or above. So at least as a starting point, I don't believe that we could fall below 80% and sustain it. What that means, as we open commerce, we also open the probabilities of infection. There's just no getting around the fact that an opening of commerce will increase our infection rate. But we cannot go below an 80% reduction in our infection rate. We cannot afford herd immunity. Herd immunity would mean thousands of deaths in Travis County and the 5-county region.
Okay, we'll move on to a question from Nick Sasale from Community Impact Newspaper. Who is on the task force, and who will the task force be working with specifically from the health sector to make their decisions?
Laura?
Danielle, if you will give them a link or something that gives people access to confirmed task force members, we'll answer the question that way. It's a pretty large group, and we've got folks from the University of Texas. We've got the health officials in the area integrated into the task force, and we've also got a nice partnership link with the governor's office so that we can ideally make whatever happens in this region fit hand in glove with the governor's work.
Okay, we have a question from Bob Sackler from the Austin American-Statesman. There have been huge job losses so far this year as a result of the coronavirus-induced economic downturn. When is it reasonable to expect that the trend to start to reverse in the Austin area and in Texas overall? Should we expect all of those lost jobs to be recovered before the end of the year, or just a portion of them?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think we know the answer to that question. You know, we're not going to know. We're going to know a lot more a month from now than we know today, and we're going to know a lot more 2 months from now than today. Life seems to be changing almost on a daily basis right now. So I don't think anybody knows. I mean, part of the reason why we need to have the testing capabilities at a really high level is so that we're able to test and monitor what the impact of whatever adaptations or behaviors we use. So I don't think anyone can give you a good answer to that question.
Although we do have Workforce Solutions, Tamara Atkinson is part of this task force. Workforce Solutions has been a fabulous partner to both the mayor and myself. The mayor spearheaded the 10,000 by 2021. Pre-COVID-19, we were at a less than 3% unemployment rate. but still we were seeing people with very thin margins in our community. And the mayor spearheaded an initiative through Workforce Solutions and asked for me to join it so that we could identify those individuals who are at thin margins and invite them to job skills trainings that would pull them up into mid-wage jobs and careers that would really be sustaining. So we do have a jump start in our work with Workforce Solutions. Travis County launched, what day is it today? Thursday. So 2 days ago, we launched an economic recovery dashboard, and the first deliverable on that dashboard is a data set that shows precisely where our population is that is applying for unemployment insurance and how hard they're hit, who specifically, what specific job types have been lost. So we are going to have a targeted approach to adapting in COVID-19 until we have sufficient testing, until we have a vaccine and a treatment. So I know that this is painful for everyone, and it's most especially painful for the folks who are living at thin margins even before COVID-19. So we are laser focused on those communities and those job types to make sure that we have a plan to come out of here as a team, that it truly is an all hands on deck.
Okay, and we'll go to part 2 of Bob's question. How is the success of a task force like this measured? Can we expect it to reduce unemployment numbers?
I think that unemployment numbers are frankly secondary to infection rate. This is a deadly virus. It has a high mortality rate in comparison to other viruses. So first, we must look to the infection rate. But we have to balance the economic well-being of Travis County residents. The two data sets are inextricably linked. We have to find a way forward that is viable for folks from an economic standpoint, but also is viable for folks from a medical standpoint.
I agree with what the judge said. I would answer the question, how do you gauge the success of the task force? First, in how well the task force members understand, learn, and appreciate the science and the data and the advice from the docs. And then second, I'd measure the success on the well-reasoned and deliberative and informed recommendations that they're able to give to the judge and to me and to the other public officials.
Okay, here's a question from Eugen Cho with KXAN. How is what this task force will be doing different from the governor's reopening plan and checklist?
First of all, our efforts have been ongoing since March. So we have been on the front lines trying to find the appropriate balance between the health threat and the economic threat of COVID-19. So we have been on the bleeding edge of this issue. The mayor and I and our entire, well, not our entire, but the most of our public health team were at a FEMA conference when COVID-19 hit the shores of the United States. So we have been dealing with this for some time now. Up close and very, very personal. I think that the difference is that local officials have been taking actions, difficult actions, from the very beginning. We are extremely knowledgeable about the effects of the actions that we've taken, as well as the choices that are available to us moving forward. We will know more swiftly what the effects of the decisions we've already made and the decisions that are to come. We are the canaries in the coal mine. We also know on a visceral level the pain that is in our smaller business community and the pain that's being felt by residents who are at thin margins. currently the governor's task force does not have a lot of representation from either local government or from small business. I think that I hope that that will change. But I do recognize that there's great utility in what the governor is doing. It looks a lot like what we've been doing for a couple of months now. And we appreciate his him stepping in with all of the power of the governor's office to assist in the response to COVID-19.
You know, and I would add to that even after the governor announces rules or guidelines for the state, communities are going to be making their own choices as well. Individuals are going to be making their own choices as well. I'm really proud to be part of this community, and I think this community is special. It could very easily be that by custom, practice, or otherwise, that there are certain things that happen in Austin because it's things that our community wants to see and chooses to live or operate that way. So I look forward to seeing how our business community, what standards the business communities impose on themselves by custom or practice, and that's the kind of conversation that I hope comes out of this task force.
And I'll just add, we have invited the governor's office, and they're going to have a representative at our kickoff meeting tomorrow. And we've also invited Senator Watson to join us. You know, the goal clearly is to make sure that those efforts fit hand in hand. And part of that is knowing what each other is doing. So we will hear from them tomorrow, and that will help inform where we can make our recommendations that either are not in conflict or add value. And I think the other thing that I want to emphasize, and both the judge and the mayor have talked about this, is I think whether you're talking about the governor's task force or this regional task force, it's really important to have a really clear and transparent path forward so that people know what they can expect and what we're going to measure in order to pause, move forward, or move backwards. I think that clarity is really important. But I think one of the points that we all want to make is we don't want anything to run interference with the individual company's ability to innovate, because we've seen some remarkable innovation in this community, and we want to provide clarity about how we're reopening, but we also want to capture all the innovation that is happening and will be happening.
Okay, we have another question from Jerry Quijano with KUT News. Is there a target for testing capacity before businesses reopen?
We are definitely taking a look at that. I'll be honest with you. Well, first, a little bit of a brag. Right now, our testing rate is we've tested about 6 out of 1,000 Travis County residents since the beginning of the pandemic. And that testing rate is better than any of the other major metropolitan areas of the state of Texas. I believe it's even better than the city of New York. But that said, we actually need 8 times that testing capacity, according to experts, to actually track and contain the virus. 8 times the testing capacity that we currently have. So our near-term goal is to reach 2,000 to 3,000 Travis County residents with testing per week. That's a significant increase over what we're doing now. We're going to achieve that through Austin Travis County Public Health's release of a community assessment portal where folks can bypass having to get a doctor's recommendation and can go straight to a free assessment, and if they qualify for our limited number of tests, a free test, as well as walking them through step by step if they do end up being COVID positive, and helping us contact trace all those who they may have infected. This is extremely important. A 2,000 to 3,000 person per week testing regime would certainly help. It still doesn't get us to the scientifically recommended capacity. We need more capacity. across the United States, across the state of Texas, and in Travis County. So we will be working on determining what that appropriate level is. Absolutely.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm going to cut you off, Judge. And I agree with the judge talking about where that testing and the testing numbers is real important. And really, that's one of the questions that we'll be looking for the doctors and the public health officials to advise us on. The Harvard report that came out was recommending 1.5 tests per 1,000 people per day. That would translate to us at about 2,000 tests a day in the county. We're nowhere near 2,000 tests. I mean, altogether, I think we've given about 9,000 tests total. We have a lot more testing capacity coming on. My hope is that really soon here in Travis County in the city, you're going to be able to go online and without a doctor, just go through an online enrollment to be able to take testing. We have greater testing capacity that's coming. But from where I sit at this point, I think probably the goal is probably going to be more like 1,000 tests a day or 5,000 tests a week. But setting those levels and those expectations and whether we need to go past that is one of the open questions right now.
Okay, here's another question from Eugen Cho with KXAN. When will the task force make its recommendations or release its reopening plan?
I think we're working backwards from May 8th because that's when the orders locally expire. So my hope is that we have at least the outlines of something that can help inform what happens post May 8th. Does that sound about right, Judge and Mayor?
Thank you so much for your help on that. Yes.
Okay.
And then quite frankly, Laura, it could be iterative. You know, as you panel this group, I'm sure there's going to be decisions that are even made past that. So having the access to this kind of knowledge is going to be important even on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So May 8th as a beginning point, but understanding that until we're all the way out of this, I think the idea of collaboration is going to be central.
And here's the second part to that question from Nick Cecile from Community Impact Newspaper. What form will task force recommendations come in?
Written?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think that in order to meet the test of transparency and clarity, we'll put something in writing that goes to the judge in the county and the mayor in the city. Of course, the meeting and the deliberation will be done on Zoom because we've all grown to love Zoom so much. We just want to keep Zooming, but we will reduce the recommendations to writing and provide those to both the county and the city.
Okay, and I'm going to combine these questions from Ken Herman with the Statesman and Mike Canales with Fox. From what you've heard from Governor Abbott, are you concerned that he might be moving too quickly toward reopening some categories of businesses? And do you agree with what the governor's reopening plan announced on Monday? Do you think it's too soon?
I think at this point, we really don't know the details of the plan until we see it. The governor has repeatedly said that his first priority is public health. And I appreciate that. The governor has repeatedly said that he's going to be guided by the science and the data and the doctors. And I'm encouraged by both of those things. I think as a community, we're gonna hold the governor to that. But I think that's what everybody wants. The governor has talked about having the economy adapt. We want that too. But he hasn't established yet any of the kind of thresholds or what happens when. So I think we'll all be looking for that as his work comes out. But he's also said and answered some questions that he doesn't have enough information or data to be able to answer some of the questions yet. So he also, I think, is going to be paying particular attention to what we do and then what kind of testing response we get to what we do so that we can be course correcting and learning more along the way.
My short answer is yes, I am worried that the governor will open commerce too broadly, thereby exposing us to higher infection rates. Absolutely, that is my concern. I think we all share that concern. And we had already, at the local level, been discussing opening up a certain amount of elective surgeries, because we do believe that we have capacity and are able to bring on a certain number of elective surgeries and then toggle back to shutting them down if we need that hospital capacity. So I am not concerned with that recommendation by the governor. I'm also, frankly, not concerned with the recommendation by the governor of opening up curbside retail, because the grocery industry, an essential business, has already shown incredible adaptations, swift, courageous, innovative adaptations that have reduced infection rate, even in an essential business that has a very high touch rate. And I believe that the retail, curbside retail, will be adopting those innovations and thereby keeping the infection rate low, even as they open up commerce there. So elective surgeries and curbside retail, I think, are appropriate advances into adaptation. But I do remain concerned about other openings to commerce that will open us up to infection rates that are unsustainable.
Okay, y'all, we have just a couple more minutes here, so I'm going to try to get to as many questions as we can. This one is from Daniel Salazar with the Business Journal. I believe this is for you, Mayor Adler. It's been several weeks since construction was allowed again under a statewide order. What results has the city seen in that industry since then, as far as reopening is concerned, and how they do not inform reopening other industries?
Well, in the last several weeks, as construction's been opening, we obviously have a lot more construction going on. We adopted some guidance, and that's been adopted by many in the construction industry, but certainly not perfectly. We continue to monitor and watch to see if there are clusters that are developing. My hope is that we do a pilot test at one of those sites to see what kind of results we get with respect to infections. But at this point, this virus leaves a certain lag time. So the kinds of infections that we see today are probably, and hospitalizations we see today are followed by 2 or 3 weeks, the infection itself. So it's something that we have to continue to monitor, and we are monitoring. But at this point, that's the same kind of thing that we're talking about, people are talking about in terms of adaptations. What are the guidance? What are the rules? What are the best ways to minimize the risk? And then to test thoroughly around it, so that if there are signals that we're doing something that's not working, we can correct it before we're in any danger of any kind of surge.
Okay, I'm going to try to get to 2 more questions here. This one is from Emma Freer with Austonia. As the regional economy reopens, will emergency resources such as unemployment benefits and utility shutoff protections still be available to residents who need them?
So go ahead. So the city adopted a policy that said that we would not be cutting off utilities for people, because we knew a lot of people were now out of work and would have difficulty making those kinds of payments. There's been no planned yet end to that practice. Obviously, the city makes that decision on an ongoing basis, but for right now that continues. The prohibition as to evictions in our city still continues. I noticed that Dallas just adopted an ordinance, adopted the Austin ordinance. Sometime in the next week, we're going to obviously have to take a look at in our city how we extend that and for how long we extend that. You know, again, we have a lot of people that are out of work right now, and a lot of people that are really hurting, which is why I am so appreciative of the grace that is being shown by landlords to people in our community. but we also recognize that landlords too have to make mortgage payments. That's why we have to have these kinds of conversations about what we do. But those immediate protections right now, from the city's perspective, I'm sure are going to continue.
From the county perspective as well, we have emergency utility assistance, emergency rent assistance, assistance with food, and we're also looking at utilizing our 381 our authorities under 381 to provide short-term loans to small businesses as well as to individuals.
Okay, and we're going to take one more question here from Laura Lorick with Silicon Hills News. There's a need for more testing. Are you going to be working with new startups like Everlywell to do that testing? And can you talk about the role the technology industry will play in helping everyone get back to work?
The mayor has been working very closely. So, Mayor, with Everly.
Well, you know, there are lots of tests that are now coming online. We're moving from a situation where there was such scarcity of the tests, and when you could find the test, you couldn't find the swab, and when you could find the test and the swab, you couldn't find the medium. Fortunately, there are a lot of people that are moving into that space. I'm really proud of the work that Everlywell is doing around the country. It's always good when we have a local Austin company that is doing such work around the state, and I know that they are involved in work with the University of Texas, Dell Medical School, with respect to setting up pilots and programs. You know, we do not yet have the overall testing strategy that we're going to need over the next 6 months to who knows how long before there's a vaccine. But we're testing those now. There is the flexibility to really set a strategy once we have more tests. Our strategy up to this point has been to give tests to people who are symptomatic, the people that we think have the virus, and those that have come into contact with it. We're now moving into the place where we have the opportunity to get many more people testing, so that we can have a better feel for what's happening in the community. And I really want us to start crowdsourcing testing. Dr. Escott is launching a platform that is a place where everybody that tests anywhere in this city, and there are a lot of people doing tests in lots of different places, will all go through that same platform. And if we do that, if we can get everybody to do that, then we're going to get the kind of statistics and data that will really be helpful in the community.
Great. Any final remarks from Judge Eckhart, Mayor Adler, or Laura?
I'll just say briefly, this kind of collaboration is what's needed during a pandemic, but it's also what's needed even in blue skies. Collaborative leadership is the genius of democracy, and because we have been able to come together so swiftly at the local level, we will know where all of our testing is coming from, whether private or public. We will know the results of that testing. We will know and do know our hospitalization rate and are able to make well-informed decisions for the benefit of our community. It's that kind of collaboration, that sort of collaborative leadership that's absolutely necessary, not only at the local level, but also at the state level and at the federal level. There is a tremendous amount of innovation that is happening in this dark time. There is a silver lining in that we are getting reacquainted with the idea that we truly are all connected. And it is going to take the efforts of every single one of us in order to come through this dark time and be better than we were before. We will be different. There is no return to business as usual. This will require adapting to a new world.
I'll just conclude with where I started off. Right now, people in our community feel safe, and that's a real testament to a community desire, a community will. You know, when you put on a mask, face covering, it doesn't protect you. It just protects the people around you from you. So when we walk into a grocery store and see people walking around wearing face coverings, we know that they're doing that for us. We have a community now that has stepped forward in a pretty selfless way in order to make everybody feel safe, to slow the infections beyond what we had thought when we started a community would actually step up and do, frankly. We can't lose that sense of safety. We have to adapt, and we have to do it in a way where everyone still knows that they're going to be safe. My concern with this conversation is that people hear the conversation about adapting is taking place, and they begin to think that the virus is no longer a concern, or it's not infectious, or that we beat it, or that we are no longer concerned with safety. None of those things are true. I want to thank Laura and the Chamber for accepting this task from the judge and from me, because the input that we expect to get will be invaluable for us. The knowledge and education is going to be invaluable for the community. So I just want to say thank you. Look forward to the kickoff tomorrow.
Thank you, Mayor and Judge, and thanks everyone for joining us. I'm looking forward to leading this task force on behalf of the Chamber. I think we, Mayor, I want to just say that I completely understand the concern that you expressed. You can count on us to lead with heart. Everybody that works in a business in Austin also lives in the community. And I think that we understand that leading with the public health interest is important in this. And Judge, I love the challenge of collaboration and innovation. And my hope is that what you will see out of this is that this task force, as a way of representing the region, will come together. We'll show you what true collaboration looks like. We'll show you what innovation looks like. And Mayor will lead with heart. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that's all the time we have for today. We'll let everyone get back to the rest of their plans for the day.
Will Dupree here in the KXAN live studio. Thanks again for joining us and watching this video conference call with the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce, the Mayor of Austin, and the Travis County Judge. They're talking about the formation of a new task force to look into reopening businesses affected by the COVID-19 pandemic here in our area. What I'll say is that they did not specify when businesses will start reopening in a way. This is all as a proactive step because Governor Greg Abbott is going to sign additional executive orders on Monday. We are unsure what exactly will be included in those. They may apply to businesses and industries reopening here in our state, as some of those actions have done for this week. Tomorrow, for instance, retail to go will be able to start operating here in the state. All stores will be able to offer that particular service. This week, state parks reopened. Also this week, some elective procedures and surgeries could begin again if there's certain requirements followed with those. So again, this is a proactive step for the community, for our county and city to look into and to try to formulate a plan to be able to implement some of these recommendations from Governor Abbott. The task force for reopening businesses here in Austin and Travis County is going to only move forward with recommendations from the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce, and there will be members of this task force organized through that chamber, and they're having their very first meeting tomorrow. We could see some recommendations come here shortly. We're unsure about that. Again, this is all kind of in the works, being developed as we speak, so we will, of course, keep following that as it develops and as new information comes to us. Before we go and wrap up this stream, I'll say that you can find more information on our website about this particular task force. We've been able to break down some information there, kxan.com and the KXAN News app. Also, I want to show you all where numbers stand in our community. Austin Public Health has shared these particular numbers for Travis County. At this point, we have more than 1,200 confirmed COVID-19 cases. 28 people have now died from it. There is some encouraging numbers, though, when we see that 344 people have recovered after getting infected. And then finally, there are some people in the hospital right now, 82 hospitalized, 32 in the intensive care unit, and 18 people on ventilators here in Travis County. Further north, in Williamson County, there are now 167 confirmed cases, and 5 people have now died from the virus. Further south in Hays County, if you take a look, they have been sharing quite a bit of data there compared to some of the other counties in our particular viewing area. As you can see, they also have more than 100 cases in Hays County now. Just 1 death to report there, and they say that there are 4 people currently hospitalized, and 65 people have now recovered from the virus after testing positive. Where it now stands in our viewing area, so this is where KXAN reaches all of these counties there. You can see where the numbers stand. I'm going to let that sit up for just a little bit so you all can see kind of where the concentrations of cases are. Of course, it's safe to assume they're in our most populous counties, so Travis, Williamson, Hays, and Bastrop have the most cases. And if you take a look, some other cases have ticked up in some of the areas further east and west. Once again, I'm Will Dupree here in the KXAN Live studio. You can find out more information about case numbers and resources available to people impacted by COVID-19, plus more details about this new task force started by Austin and Travis County on our website, kxan.com, and the KXAN News app. We'll come back to you throughout the day with additional updates. Thanks for joining us and watching this morning. We do appreciate that. Everyone, please stay safe, healthy, and if at all possible, at home.